The ultimate male fantasy is rather flat and boring. Welcome, mere mortalites, to another episode of the Mere Mortals Book Reviews. I am your host, Kyron, here on the 13th of the 11th, so the 13th of November, 2024, live as usual at 11 a.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. And as you might surmise, this is the podcast where I outline my plans for the ultimate misogynistic, patriarchal fantasy society. That's right, I'm going into it. I'm telling you all what I'm actually like inside. Okay, I won't be doing that, but I will be touching upon that in this book that we do have here, The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood. It was published in 1985. It's 314 pages in length. It took me about 6 hours of reading to get through in total. So it's told from the point of view of this unnamed narrator, although we do kind of get a name of hers named Offred, being off of Fred, which is in a reference to a male name. But largely we don't know her actual name. We don't really know much about her at all, to be honest. We just start this narration at some point in her life, this being in her mid-30s. And this takes place in the USA, where there has been an overthrown government, and everything is now dystopian. So it's a dystopian fictional book. Our girl here, Offred, is 33 years old and a handmaid whose only purpose is to give birth. What we see in this book, there's a lot of family structures have changed. It's very totalitarian, so everyone is watched or looking out, going like, ooh, like, am I going to get in trouble? It is a lot of violence. A lot of violence in this book. Capital punishment, suicide, torture, things like that. A lot of monotonous routine as well, because it's not a particularly exciting book. It's really told within the confines of her own mind mostly, because there's very little dialogue actually occurring between characters as well. So a sprinkle of religiosity as well, if you want to add that in. So what we have in this book is there's very short chapters. They're probably like 10 pages max. And how many chapters are we getting up to here? It's like 40 something in a book of only 300 and something pages. So yeah, they're quite short chapters. And it's interspersed with her recollections of the past, where she is currently in this dystopian. Right at the end, we get a little future historical context, but it's largely just told it's all told from the point of view of this female character. So let's jump into some of the actual themes, the questions, what's going on, why is this book interesting, important, and what can it have to teach us perhaps. And with a speculative fiction like this, and this is certainly speculative fiction, some people might want to say it's science fiction, but there's actually not that much sciencey stuff about it. It's more along the lines of 1984 and Brave New World and things like that, rather than fantasy and actual sci-fi. And with something like this, the question is like, could this happen? Is this actually a realistic scenario? Is there enough maybe trendings in this world that the world could go to a place like this? And I think this will really touch upon the theme of relations between men and women, and how they are very distorted in this world that we have in this book. So we get a taste of the both before and after. Before is there's no time period for this, although it's kind of speculated that it was around the 2000s period perhaps, and it certainly referenced just a lot of normal technology that we are used to, or that we all used to maybe like 20 years ago. So there was things such as telephones, there were things such as computers, electricity, all that sort of stuff. So just think of around the 2000s period. And there was a lot of liberty. There's a lot of freedom for women to choose their partners. So, for example, we get to know about her and her relationship between this guy called Luke, who they had an extramarital affair. Luke was married. He has a daughter with her, I believe a daughter, and a child with her at the very least. She is on good terms with her mom and has peers amongst society. Has a job, best friend who's a little bit alternative, is lesbian. It's like, oh, but it's not the biggest deal either. Her mother was more, I guess, feminist or a trailblazer in some respects. It seemed just like society as we currently have now. I don't think there's that much worth more examining, because the more interesting aspect is, okay, well, how is this future society very different from what we have now? And so what we see is this revolution occurs in the USA, it becomes totalitarian, and there's a gradual enforcing of stricter and stricter laws. Women aren't allowed to have jobs. There's only special privilege, well, not privileges. You become like an underclass if you are a single female, or if you are in a second marriage, or beyond that, or especially if you're probably have alternative sexual preferences, LGBTQ, whatever. That sort of stuff is frowned upon, not very good, and there's a lot of financial and social and even restrictions of physical freedom, i.e. you're not allowed to leave the country and things like this. So what we see is that the post-revolution, basically every interaction between male and female is about sexual reproduction. And the other thing to add to this, and it's kind of hard to say this at certain points, and it gets all jumbled up because the storyline goes here and there, and we only get information at very sparsely put out through it. We also learned that there has been a crisis of sexual reproduction. A lot of women have become sterile. I can't remember if it says the men have become sterile in general as well, or in large swathes. I don't believe so, but in any case, the women certainly have become sterile in general, and so there's a premium placed on girls who have been proved in the past to have been able to give birth, and the kind of distance between her normal life as she once remembered and then where she is now is probably about 6 to 7 years. And so, yes, we know she gave birth previously in the old world, and now in this new world, there's a premium on her because it's like, oh, well, we know she's not sterile. So what we see, there's not... and it's not even sexual tension in general. It is purely sexual reproduction. And so we don't see any laughter, complaining, banter, friends, or communities in this world, really, and especially not between men and women. Perhaps they do, but as we're seeing this only through the lens of this main character, we'll call her Offred, we don't see what perhaps lives are like for some of the other characters behind the scenes, or in a lot more detail. So we have these kind of ritualistic sex for births with the wife there. That's really all about sexual reproduction. We have her perhaps like taunting the Guardians, and she has a sexual escapade with Nick, which it's kind of taboo, but once again, it has this sexual reproduction aspect to it. The only reason she's doing this is because she needs to get pregnant. Otherwise, she could be shipped off to these colonies, really bad places where, you'll die very, very quickly. And there's a doctor who she sees. He offers to have sex with her as well to be able to reproduce. And then every other interaction is between these kind of uncaring angels / eyes / guardians, who are men who are basically, think of them as like army type people, whether they be in the Secret Service, whether they're foot soldiers, or whether they're just general, peasants on the street, I guess. Well, not peasants, workers on the street. It's all very, very restrictive, and it's just, straight communication back and forth if there has to be any. There largely isn't. And I can't recall a male and a female having even a minor conversation outside of all of these conventions. It doesn't seem that, her buying groceries and talking to the grocer is probably the closest that we get to that. And even that is very a strange situation, because she's always with if she goes out, she's always with another handmaid. I'll get onto what Handmaid actually is shortly. But there's always another person kind of interspersed in between these conversations. But this is not just her, though. Even some of the women with perhaps different privileges or different positions, they all seem to have a very muted, weird relationship between themselves and men. Even the ones that are, meant to be their partner. So, for example, the wife of the commander is who is the guy he's like the top dog. He's basically one of the top men in the totalitarian state, and he has the power, he has the privileges and things like that. And even his wife, who is they also have privileges of sorts. It's a very strained relationship between them. They don't seem to communicate. They don't seem to get along well. It's very very strange. We don't even talk convivially. That's a shit word. Hate that. Convivially together. There's no scenes of a wife or a daughter or an aunt or a Martha talking with a man. No social functions or get-togethers without babies or fear. Probably the only other interaction between men and women is fear in this world. And all of this is made possible through the structure of this world. So we see this population decline as most women are sterile. Everyone is dressed in very strict attire. So the handmaids, so these are the girls who could potentially reproduce, are in red. The wives of top commanders and of important people are dressed in blue. And these are women who are infertile. They can't give birth. We have these daughters. So these are girls who are, prepubescent or perhaps just getting towards the age of reproduction, who are dressed in white. We have the aunts, which are these kind of strict women who help enforce the laws and teach the handmaids how to live, what their duties are in this new world, because they're simultaneously the most prized and important people, because they're the only people who can give birth, but they are also almost the lowest in a certain sense, because they have no other purpose other than to give birth. And so no one cares about their intellect. No one cares about if they can work or do anything else. Like, it's purely, you need to just keep your body safe so that you can give birth, and that's all there is for you. And we also have these Marthas. So these are the kind of the cooks, the maids, the cleaners, who are dressed in green. So social interactions are limited through the threat of violence or deportation to the colonies. Once still talking about the structure here, very limited means of social progress via giving birth to a child. That's the only way you could progress in this world for these handmaids. And indoctrination means even female to female interactions are rather subdued. There's an overbearing pressure to conform, to watch your words, to if someone says something, you have to respond in the correct way. Even handmaids aren't meant to talk together, even though they will go grocery shopping together, for example. It's very, emotional outlets are very limited, and are limited only to big group gatherings which can be watched, such as these salvagings where they kind of repent or get to watch a capital punishment taking place, birthing ceremonies where a handmaid will be giving birth, and these kind of secret meetings or parties that only men can organize. So the whole picture I've given here is of this world where, man, sucks to be a female, right? It's not a nice place, and men get to be at the top, men get to be in the army and the Secret Service. They've got all the privileges. They control what women do, their reproduction, sexual, everything about them, down to communication. What a fantastic world, right? Men, we've done it. We've made it to the top. Unfortunately, it's not as amazing as it sounds. Not that that would be amazing at all anyway. Women finally put in their place, right? And men get to have all the fun. It's not like that. It's not like that at all. And if you believe that this is what men would want as well, I'm not sure you really know men either, because everything in this world applies to the guys. So we see all the men are rather strict in their attire as well. There's no liberty or freedom in those cases. So the commanders, these men at the top, they're always in suits. The bodyguards or the drivers, the chauffeurs, things like that, they've got a very strict attire as well. Obviously, people in the army and the guardians, they're strict, in military gear. The eyes, I can't remember what they're dressed in, but these are the kind of Secret Service people. All of them are no one we really see dressing up in anything crazy, other than when they break the rules and go to a secret party where they do have things like sequined shirts or crop tops or things like this. And so the men, they get all these restrictions as well. Okay, but they can do what they want, right? They have control over women's bodies. They could rape them, for example. Incorrect. Rape is even worse for the men than it is for the women. They get killed instantly because, once again, if the sexual reproduction is all that's important, it's the guys who want to make sure that their children are getting birthed right and not some other random dude. So rape or even consensual sex outside of these very strict norms, not allowed, prohibited. You're going to die for that. So okay, well that's not so good. Men also have limited ability to move up the hierarchy. They could only do this via being like a good warrior and fighting overseas. And that's about it. There doesn't seem much, like, business doesn't really exist from what I can tell. All the businesses are, they're not allowed to have individual names. It'll be called, milk and cheese. And you go there to get milk and cheese. So there's, you can't create a business. It's not like an entrepreneurial world, certainly. Men also have to watch their words and be careful of tattletales. Men die in wars. The life of an average man there appears to suck as well. And because, if this is the ultimate male fantasy world, right, you would assume that men would just be able to have sex constantly and be like, oh, amazing for them. But it seems that in this world that it's hard to tell because you're only getting it from this point of view of this one female in a very unique position. We don't see like the general. So, for example, who provides them with the cheese? There's got to be a cheese maker. There's got to be someone who makes the materials to be able to make cheese. So there's got to be a whole network, a world of interactions going on. But we don't see that. We only see it from this one very special position. It would be like a person, a billionaire's daughter or something, giving so she would be someone who maybe would have bodyguards around her whole life. She would go to very special schools. She would probably only interact with people of the highest class. It would be like her writing a book of how the world is like, and the rest of the world would kind of just be like, man, this is not, this is not how the world actually works. We don't all live in ridiculous penthouses and snap our fingers and things get cleaned or go to the best hospitals or anything like that. It would be, imagine that, and also her never escaping from the confines of Beverly Hills or something like that. So this world is very distorted just from the way we see it. Which is not to say that her position is something to not be thrown away as I mean, it's certainly an interesting position, and I'll get on to could this happen in a second. But from the world she describes, it's so strange that I struggled to understand how it could work if every interaction was like hers. And it does seem to be that she just had this very, very one special, unique position. And then I can't also, if women are not giving birth in general, then how the hell is all of this other stuff happening? How is she getting cheese or milk without a whole network of peons and, people who are peasants compared to her? I don't know. It's hard to say. So could this happen? And is this sort of world realistic? It's maybe. We have seen crazy behavior before in societies around the world. If you read anything about what Stalin's Soviet Russia was like, right at the top, that was a very, very strange, weird world. And even in some of the middle sections of society, it was still a very strange world. There was still a lot of just normal interactions of people farming and going to markets and things like that. But markets were distorted because there was price controls and fixed pricing. And when you got right up to the top levels of the Politburo or the whatever was before the KGB, I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head, that was certainly a strange world. So, and Atwood herself said that all of the things that she based in this book, all of the behaviors, all of the things were things she had written about and had a historical example for. So obviously then she's just picking and choosing different elements of what we've seen in the real world and putting it together in this creation that she's put. The rapidity of the change within 5 to 7 years, that's pretty crazy though. I'd be hard to believe that this could actually happen. And almost certainly would be unsustainable and unlikely for several reasons. All of this applies even to the ones at the top, making the rules and controlling. So commanders voluntarily making sex less fun for themselves. I struggle to believe that. If you're the one at the top controlling things, you think you'd want to make this world the best it could be for you, right? But even their secret parties he has to be very careful for, and it's dangerous for him to go to. When he has sex with the handmaid that's being offered, it's very ritualistic. He's not meant to derive pleasure from it, and it's very, very strange and weird. It's like, well, if he controls everything, why wouldn't he make it better for himself? Have all of life's pleasures been erased? Seems like a society like this would need some sort of communal things, such as the church, to keep people in place, or gatherings to provide some sort of... It just feels like people would break really quickly if this was what the world was like in general. And just some range thing, like how can the most valuable people be allowed to roam the streets? So she's like, she can just go wherever she wants. To a certain extent, she's not being watched in this case. If she just wanted to try and make a break for it, she could. And she interacts with men who have, by the sounds of it, never had a woman in their life. It doesn't seem to imply that sex is allowed outside of trying to reproduce, and so infertile women, I don't get the feeling that they're allowed to have sex. So there's just thousands, hundreds of thousands of men who have never had sex before, and they see like a youngish, a fertile woman roaming around the streets, and sure, they're meant to be guarding her, but it's like, I don't know. That doesn't sound right to me. That some guy who's never had sex before, he'd be willing to do a lot to make that happen. For example, you don't put young men in charge of a harem. Lol. Where is all the food material coming from? Because technology seems to have stalled. If pre-production is so important, then why isn't the population in terminal decline? Why aren't they doing everything they can to maximize the chances of reproduction? Seems kind of strange. Would older barren women really care for another's child? So when they give birth, the child is then given to the wives, but it's not their baby. So are they going to actually care for them properly? And would they actually want that? Taking someone's child away and not killing them seems like it could backfire. That seems pretty strange. And men are so obsessed with women and not even wary of other men. Didn't seem to be much wariness of the commander, for example, worrying like there's another dude living in his house, and he's not worried that this girl who's sexually reproductive, her door's not even locked at night. She could just walk out. She just walks out and goes to this other dude's room and has sex with him, and it has to be like careful and sneaky and tiptoe, and it's like, oh, there's searchlights, but she seems to do it rather easily. I don't know. Seems could this world actually happen? Yes, but not only portions of this. I don't think that it would go the way that it was described in this book. It seemed rather strange. Anyway, let's keep going on. Let's jump onto the author, some extra details. Margaret Atwood was born in 1939 and still going strong, it seems, so good for her. Canadian author. She's written extensively across multiple different genres, novellas, journalistic pieces, short stories, I think even graphic novels, stuff like that, and was very involved with current themes and wrote this to reflect some of the trends that she noticed growing up in post-war Canada. And so hence the kind of dystopian nature of it. Canada, for example, it seemed that a lot of women went into the workforce for the war efforts and things like that. And then after the war, they were getting kicked out of jobs because people wanted it to return to the way it was before. Women staying in the household, men working, that sort of stuff. And there was a bit of tension going on then. So she neither describes this as feminist nor science fiction, which makes sense to me. And it just seems more dystopian rather than misogynistic in nature. This book is one of those ones where it seemed to be like a female rallying cry for feminists going, this is what would happen if men could get what they wanted exactly. We need to fight against this sort of thing. But it's like, I'm not sure. I don't know any guy who would want to live in a world like this. Like this is a messed up world, which is neither beneficial for men nor women. So I don't know. I don't know about that. In terms of the actual book itself, I found the pacing really, really quite excellent. It strings you along quite nicely by only providing these little glimpses of info here and there. You get this little Latin thing scratched into her cupboard, and it's like, oh, what does that mean? And you find on later. You're eventually learning about why the women are infertile due to radiation and things like that. So you learn more about this world. She's living in this world, but you only learn about it very gradually. And I thought that was pretty good. And the insights into how this character must feel and what's going on through her mind. She thinks about suicide sometimes, but then she thinks about her daughter. She thinks about Nick, the man who, she thinks might be dead, but maybe isn't. So there's still a little bit of hope. And we get these little snippets of this black market material. She gets to see a photo of her daughter. She'll get like a little special privilege. She can put on some lipstick with the commander. She goes out to a party. She sees her friend who ran away. There's all these little snippets of action here and there that feel realistic in this whole world of structured life and routine. So just the way the book itself was written was, I thought, really well done. The way, the actual structure of how it was presented, which will get us onto the final summary, similar books and some recommendations. It's an okay book. My main problem was I found it kind of boring, to be honest. There's a lot of reminiscing in old times and housework. So it wasn't exactly like a fast-paced novel, even though it kept me engaged, but it also wasn't like, wow, keeping me... I wasn't fascinated as well. It was almost like the writing was well done, but the actual content not so much, perhaps. It's believable in some sense, but I also didn't find myself transported into this world, imagining it myself there, perhaps because it was from the female point of view. And so a lot of the things she said about, how her body's feeling, her worries of, having her child lost and things like this are just things that I haven't and can't in many cases experience myself. So perhaps that's why I had this little bit of distance from the book. Stylistically, I found it worked well, kept me motivated enough to keep going, but there was some points where I'm like, it's getting a bit tedious. I'm not sure I want to keep going on with this. So overall, I'm going to give The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood, 4.5 out of 10. This, maybe for some people you really like this. It's firmly in the camp of dystopian classics. So I mentioned some of these: 1984, Brave New World, Fahrenheit 451. Give those a try if you really enjoyed this book. I used to think I loved dystopians books. What I actually found was I just really loved 1984, and dystopian books in general I've found to be honestly a bit underwhelming in many cases. They're kind of like semi-interesting, but it's also just like, man, that takes a lot of leaps and bounds to get to this world where they're describing, and it just doesn't seem sustainable. So she also had a follow-up in 2019, 34 years later. Wow, called The Testaments if you wanted to read that as well. And yeah, that's it for today. Thank you very much for joining in. This is a value for value podcast. So I put all this value up here, this book review up for you up front. I hope this to be accessible anytime, any place, anywhere for anyone, free of charge, of course, as well. I do not do sponsorships, nor advertising, nor any sorts of influence behind the scenes of the books that I'm picking. It's pretty much only just, I'll go over some point, do a non-book review episode of how I choose the books I choose and where I get them from. So I do all of that, and all of that up front, and I just ask that you return that value in some shape or form. You can do this many ways. You could give it a share and a like and things like that on social media, joining in live, and I'll touch about that shortly. I'd love to hear your book recommendations of things that you think I would like, or perhaps even ones that maybe I should stay away from if I'm saying that I might read them, because I've had some very helpful recommendations recently. I forgot to mention this, but East of Eden by John Steinbeck, the book I reviewed just prior to this. Love, 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 love. And that was by Johnny, who is actually joining us live as well. So thank you very much for that, Johnny. Massive appreciation. I was probably going to get to it anyway because I really love Steinbeck, but you telling me to read that has certainly bumped it up the order. So very much appreciated. And the last, you can support monetarily as well. There's a PayPal link down below, which would be awesome, and I would certainly shout you out if you sent through any money to the channel for that. I am live here on Wednesdays, Australian Eastern Standard Time at 9 a.m. I've got a couple of people in the chat, so Johnny was here. Much appreciated, Johnny. Lisa S. says, good evening. I remember one girl with whom I went to uni had this book in one of her English lit courses. Was never a big fan of Dystopia. Yeah, I mean, the problem with that is always I have a very strong opinions on forcing kids to read certain books. English is important, learning to read is important, but forcing them to read certain books, I think is unhelpful and made me fall out of love with reading when I had to read stuff like Looking for Alibrandi, what was the one with the greases and Pony Kid? I've forgotten the name of that. Even To Kill a Mockingbird, I would probably have enjoyed reading that nowadays, but I didn't enjoy it when it's like, you have to think, what is the theme of the book, and what was, I'm forced to talk about the relationship between the lawyer and his son, whereas I'd maybe be more interested in the relationship between the lawyer and the accused, or things like this. And so I can see why your friend would perhaps not get into that, because when I was forced to Shakespeare, maybe I'll get to Shakespeare one day, but it's going to take a long time for the trauma of my English classes in high school to to go beyond me. So thank you very much for joining, Lisa and Johnny. Much appreciated. Call out to anyone. I will be doing these live Wednesday, 9 a.m. Australian. 11 a.m. Why am I saying 9? 11 a.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time, which you'll have to just do some conversions in Google. Ask Google for when that is into your local time zone. And I expect to be doing that really consistently for the foreseeable 6 months. After that, we'll see. I might be traveling again. And Juan also does some book reviews every now and then, which he puts on a Saturday. These are not live, so just look out for those on the YouTube channel and on the podcast itself. So this was turned into a big one. Wow, I had a lot of thoughts on it, even though I didn't actually enjoy the book that much. That's how it goes, I guess. So thank you very much for joining me, and I really do hope you're having a fantastic day wherever you are in the world. Ciao for now. Kyron out. Bye.